Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer. This video is about October, my month in review, all the books I read and what I thought of them. I'm not going to rate the books in this video. All the books I talk about will have videos of their own on my channel. Okay, let's get started with all the books I've read in October. The first book I read is Death by Demo by Callie Carpenter. It's the first book in a Cozy Mystery series, a new series. It was an ARC read, so a new release. I enjoyed this book. For a first book in a Cozy Mystery series, it was very strong. The mystery was strong, the characters are good, the setting is very good. It's set in a small town, I think. Well, it's got a small town feel to it anyway. I just liked all the characters, the interactions, the whole setup. I think the mystery was clever. I'm looking forward to more books in this series. I think if you're looking for just a nice Cozy Mystery series that's different feel to it. It's the first time I've read a home renovation based Cozy Mystery, and I don't think it will be the last. I liked this very much. Looking forward to more in this series. I then read The Fine Art of Uncanny Prediction, written by Goddard. It's the second book to feature Emylia Wada, and Goddard is not an author who's known to write series. He usually writes standalone books, so I think this character just made an impact on many readers, and Goddard decided, let's keep going, and I hope he decides to write a third book with this character. Emylia Wada is a fantastic character. I really enjoyed her in the first book, and this book, she's just more special, I think. This book is set about 3 years in the future from the end of book 1. A good choice because it allows the character to develop off-narrative. So the character grows very much from the first book to this book, just in confidence, the way she handles herself. This book is also set mainly in Japan, which I really enjoyed, because it gave us just that whole feel of Japan, with the characters, the setting, the way Emylia navigates everything in Japan. Feels so much more different to the first book, because in the first book she was going to different countries a lot. And this book, she does go offshore for a small part of the book, but most of the book is in Japan, and I found that so special. I then went back to the Agatha Raisin series and I read Agatha Raisin and the Day the Floods Came, written by MC Beaton. It's not the best book in the series. And I'm going through the whole series again. And I do enjoy the series very much, primarily because of Agatha Raisin herself. I know Agatha Raisin's not a character everybody likes, but I enjoy her character very much in this series. But this book, it has a different tag-along psychic character. So, we have John, who's a new neighbour for Agatha, and MC Beaton setting up John as a potential love interest, I feel. It seems too many too soon. We had James, a neighbour early on in the series. We had Sir Charles, and now we've got John. And again, this love interest, male character, tags along in a mystery and helps Agatha solve a mystery or investigate it anyway. John's not the same feel as Sir Charles or James. He seems more laid back. He seems more a bit unfocused, even a bit, a downer, if I can say that. He's not as lively in the books as Sir Charles or James. So I do miss Sir Charles and James in this book. I think John just wasn't the best choice of character for MC Beaton, which is rare for this author because MC Beaton's usually spot on with the characters. I just hope that John doesn't stick around too much in this series. I stuck with Agatha Raisin for the next book, and I read Agatha Raisin and the Case of the Curious Curate by MC Beaton. I really enjoyed this book a lot. It develops Agatha Raisin even more in the series, her character. So in this book, we see a charitable nature to Agatha. We see her thinking about starting charities for old people in the village and in the area. We just see so much different sides to Agatha in the series so far, and especially in this book. And also Mrs. Bloxby. Mrs. Bloxby has a different side in this story. She has to, because her husband is a suspect of murder. So we see more of a fire in Mrs. Bloxby. We see more of a steel spine, more courageous, a bit more fiery, a bit more brave, a bit more out there, outgoing, just in her personality. It's great to see that development with Mrs. Bloxby because she's one of the most important support characters in this series. She's always there as the big support for Agatha in every book. So it's great to see different sides to her in this book. Also in this book is one of the best scenes in the series so far. They have a village fete and they have a duck race. And the duck race is described so well. If nothing else, read the book for that scene alone. I love that scene so much. It has to be almost my favourite scene in all the series so far. I then switched to another series I'm reading, Sue Grafton's series, starring Kinsey Malone, and I read W is for Wasted. This book actually felt like a waste of time in the series. It's okay written, like the writing's good in the story, but it's just the book. It doesn't feel like a mystery at all. It feels like a family drama, and I read this series for the mysteries, not for the drama. So I'd say it's about 10-15% mystery, the rest family drama. Also in this book, Kinsey finds some more unknown cousins, and we've been there before. We've had unknown cousins in this series from about maybe book 6 or 7, maybe even earlier than that. We have to have this again in this series. It just feels too much. It feels too much same. We've been there before. We don't need more unknown family popping up and causing drama for Kinsey. This book also features some homeless characters, and I really like the way Sue Grafton wrote these characters. She gives them true personalities, doesn't make them stereotype characters like many people do in their novels, and these characters just felt so lifelike because of that. There's 3 main characters that are homeless in this story, and I like them all. For different reasons, but I like each one of them. They're all standouts for me in this story. I'm so thankful that Sue Grafton wrote the characters like she did. I then got my hands on Stephen King's latest book, Holly. And Holly is one of my favourite Stephen King characters of all time. I enjoy her character so much. In this book, she's brilliant. The whole book's brilliant, basically. Every character in the book is so well done. There are so many good points of view in this story as well. I love the villains in this story. The villains feel so creepy, so gripping, but they're also very engaging, and they're also very good characters in this story. Holly has people helping her, and those characters are also very good. Also in this story, some of those side characters, they have other things going on, and it makes the whole story feel more lifelike, more real. So other characters are invested in other things, not just what Holly's investigating in this story. Got other things going on for themselves, and they just cross paths with Holly at different times in the book. And I enjoy that in this story because it gives those other characters in the book more agency, makes them feel real, gives them just more development in the story as well. And I like that. I like the way Stephen King developed that in the story. It'd be so easy for Stephen King to, veer off on different tangents with Holly, to make certain aspects of a personality, stronger than they should be. But she's so balanced in the story. She feels so real. I hope there's many more stories featuring Holly. I then read The Stranger Times, written by CK McDonnell. It's an urban fantasy series. It's book 1 in the Stranger Times series. This book is also very humorous, but the humour is very dry, it's very witty, the sort of humour I really enjoy. And it's not cheesy at all. I think sometimes when authors write humorous stories, it comes across as too cheesy, like too forced humour. But in this book, it's not forced at all. It feels very natural, feels very organic. It comes down to the way everything's designed in the story. The whole plot, the characters, the settings. It's a bit outlandish in certain ways, but it feels okay because it just suits everything in the story. Basically, it's about this group of people who are working for a small newspaper called The Stranger Times, and they report on things like Bigfoot, UFOs, strange creatures, bizarre happenings, all that sort of thing. But they soon find out that all the things they're reporting on are actually real. There's a secret world beneath our world, hidden in plain sight. They soon find out they're in the middle of things. They've got to solve a mystery, but they've also got to stay alive. That's what goes on in this book. It's very gripping, very engaging, very funny. There's great characters. All the main characters who work in this newspaper are so well written. I enjoy them all, and I enjoyed them all very early on in this series. I really recommend this series, and I'm going to read every book in this series as the series progresses. I'm hoping there's many books to enjoy. I then switched to old school horror, and I read Darkness Tell Us, written by Richard Laymon. It's supernatural horror and slasher horror, kind of combined in this story. Got a great concept. It's about a group of college kids. They're playing with a Ouija board, and they connect with a spirit. And the spirit tells them about some treasure hidden in the mountains, and the spirit will tell them how to get there. So the kids are hooked. They decide to steal the board from their teacher and go to the mountains and try to find this treasure. When they get to the mountains, that's where the slasher horror thing starts, because there's something else there in the mountains as well. So there are parts of this book that are really gripping. But unfortunately, there are many slow parts. I mean, really, really slow. It just feels like the pace of this book just falls away, non-existent in many parts of this story. So I think this book would have been better if those slow parts were much shorter and the author just concentrated on those horror elements more in the story. A great concept, but just ruined because the pacing is just way off in this story. The next book I read was The Mystery Guest, written by Nita, Prose. This author also wrote The Maid, and The Maid was one of my favourite books in 2022, and this book is also very good. One of my favourite books this year. Molly the Maid is one of my favourite characters in recent times as well, and in this book the support characters, some new, some returning from book one, are very good characters indeed. I also liked the switch between past and present in this story, and I don't always like that, but this book is so good that past and present switches didn't matter to me so much. But in the past, we learned so much more about the main character's grandma, and I like those chapters because of that. We get to see the grandmother, we get to see Molly as a younger girl in those chapters, and how they interact, and how the grandmother's teaching her to survive in the world, basically. I love those chapters so much. Also in those chapters, we see characters in the past as well, who are in the present, in the hotel, in the present timeline. It's good to see how that past and present just merges as well, because there are great things in the past to pick up, to understand what's going on in the present. A great story, a great mystery, great characters, a great setting. The hotel setting is really good in this book. Makes me wonder if there's more books in the series where they will stay at the hotel. If it does, I think that's a bit of a risk, because how many books like this can you have in the one small setting? So I wonder if Molly the Maid will end up breaking free of the hotel in the next book, if there is a next book. And I hope there is, because this character is so well developed, so well described, so well used in the story as well, a great balance and an amazing character of modern times. I then read the first book in another urban fantasy series called Rivers of London, written by Ben Aaronovitch. I think it's called something else in the US market, but I can't remember what that was. This book is not as good as the other urban fantasy series I started, called The Stranger Times. It's still okay, but it's just got something missing, I think. I think a lot of that comes down to how the main characters developed in this book. In this book, the main character is just thrust into this world of magic and strange creatures. But everything he learns, he just takes on board straight away with no worries. You'd think if he's learning about things for the first time, he'd be a bit more shocked, a bit more cautious, even worried, even fearful. But in this book, he's not. Everything just feels so natural to him. He takes it in his stride, and nothing really matters. That felt really strange, and it just, took away some of the reality of this story. Even though it's a fantasy book, just took some of that reality away of the setting, because it is set in London, just with a fantasy twist. Also in this book, this main character acts like a horny 13-year-old. He does so often in this story. It's very off-putting. I don't know why that's part of his character. Doesn't suit the style of the story as well. Just makes it feel really odd to me. But it's not all bad. I mean, the magic system in this world, in this book, is very good. It's intriguing. It's interesting. There are things going on that really hooked me with that magic system. And also different concepts. When he first sees a ghost and talks to a ghost, it's very interesting. Even though he just takes it on board straight away, he's not shocked, which is very strange in the story how that happens. It's very interesting that we have these ghosts popping up, and we have different other creatures popping up as well. So I did like that in the story, but I'm not enjoying this series as much as the Stranger Times series. I then went back to Sue Grafton and read X, which is book 24 in the Kinsey Malone series. After finishing this book, I was wondering what Sue Grafton's plan was for the series. Because this book, even though it's well written, and even though we have Kinsey's point of view for most of the story, it just felt very disjointed. We have 3 mysteries Kinsey's involved in. None of them connect at all. You could take one out completely. There's a mystery about Henry's water use. There's a drought going on, and Henry's trying to use less water, but his water bill's going up. He's wondering why. Then Kinsey's trying to help him investigate, and we get all this dry and boring detail about water use and water conservation. Pages and pages of it, and it just drags the story down. The pace just bottoms out completely. That mystery could be gone completely out of the story. And then another mystery about a missing person. That was a bit tedious as well. The shining light in this story is the mystery that leads to this character called Ned Lowe. And Ned Lowe becomes a really big villain in this book. And I like that villain very much. He's gripping, he's engaging, he's chilling and creepy. There's so much to hook you into the story with this Ned Lowe character. So he's used very well in the book. I think he could have just been made bigger in the story and remove other mysteries from the book and have him alone as the only mystery, the big villain in the story that Kinsey's trying to track down. Because he is dangerous. He feels deadly. It feels like he's a big match for Kinsey. It feels like Kinsey could be in trouble with this guy. And the ending of this book is really shocking. It's a cliffhanger ending, a great twist at the end, and it just leads to possibilities for the next book and the last book in this series. For the next book, I stuck with Sue Grafton and read Y is for Yesterday, which is book 25 in the Kinsey Malone series, and unfortunately the last book. So in this book, what happens? It's a big letdown for me. We have this character, Ned Lowe, who was the big baddie, the big villain in the previous book, and he reappears in this book. Unfortunately, in this book, he comes across like a comic book character, very cartoonish. He's just very inept in this story. He just does stupid things, acts in stupid ways, not like in the previous book. Also, we have the return of a character called Pearl, who we met in W is for Wasted, and she's a homeless character. But in this book as well, she's very cartoonish, very comical, and it ruins the character for me. In the previous book we met her in, she was a great character, very lifelike, so real, so engaging. But in this book, all that's wasted, because the character just turns to rubbish basically in this story. Also in this story, Kinsey behaves in ways that are completely different to the way she behaves in previous books. Doesn't match her character at all. There's one case in this story that she takes on, and she does certain things, certain actions, makes certain choices that don't align with her character at all. Those choices that Kinsey makes in the story did colour my view of the book overall. Very disappointing end to the series. For this series, I just felt that the last few books in the series were not as good as the beginning of the series. I then wanted to read something completely different, and I read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, written by Robert Louis Stevenson. I like this very much. I like the atmosphere in the story. London is described so well in this book. It's a novella, a very short story, but it's described so well. It's very character-driven, and those characters are very good in this story. It's also about morality, I think. You're just asked to contemplate the questions in this book. For example, are we guilty of our misdeeds all the time? What does it mean to be good or evil? How is somebody becoming deviant? And what is deviance? They're questions that are asked in this story of the reader. Now, deviance was a big theme, I think, in this story. Almost like the author's obsessed with that in this story. It makes me wonder in Victorian times if deviance in general was a big theme that was discussed often. I'm not sure. But I enjoyed the story. It's a good horror story, a good gothic horror story with great atmosphere and great characters, and I think a great theme, a great concept for that time as well. I then went back to a cozy mystery series and read The Harbour Lights mystery, written by Emylia Hall. It was an arc read, and it's book 2 in the Shell House Detectives series. I read book 1 and liked it very much, but in this book, I didn't like it as much. Most of that comes down to there are too many different points of view in this story. There are about 8 or 9 of them, I think, and the focus is taken away from the main characters too often. What that does, it makes the main characters just seem less developed. And in some ways, they actually are. The mystery is clever, very engaging. The start of the book is a fantastic hook. Those first 2 chapters are so gripping, so engaging. It just drags you into the mystery straight away. There's no slow burn intro to this book. It's just straight away. Crime happens, you're hooked, you're engaged, and then the mystery unfolds. Now, if the points of view of the 2 main characters were the biggest points of view in this book, would have been much better, would have been engaged right through the story. But it changes so often. We have too many points of view, and I was dragged away from those main characters for too much of this story. It's not as good as book 1, I still hope for more books in the series, and I hope future books return the point of view to the main characters for most of the story. I don't know what it is about October, but I started many new series in October. And this next book is a cozy mystery, and it's the first book in the Sophie Sayers series. This one is called Best Murder in Show, and it's written by Debbie Young. Now this book has a setting I really enjoy. It's set in a small English village. I love that type of setting in cozy mysteries. It just opens up many things for characters, opens up many things for descriptions, just that whole village feel, that whole country feel as well I enjoy in this type of book. But this book has a strange structure. I'm not sure why it's written in that way. The first chapter has an amazing hook. We have the murder happening in the first chapter. And I thought, great. From then on, we're going to have the investigation. We'll have the protagonist meddling in people's lives, questioning them, trying to sort out fact from fiction, trying to solve that crime. But it doesn't work like that in this story. From that great hook in the first chapter, it goes back in time. And for about 90% of the story, we just have village life. We have the main character coming to the village. She's inheriting a house from a great aunt or something. And then she's just settling in, trying to find a job. She happens to find a job in a bookstore in this small village. How a bookstore survives in this small village, I don't know. But she finds a job in one. Then it's all about her settling in and just meeting characters in the village. Thankfully, some of those characters are very engaging because the main character is not that engaging at all. And then the very end of the story, for the last few chapters, we have the crime again. And then we have, a little bit of an investigation, not very much to speak of at all. Then we find out who the suspect is, the culprit is. Then it finishes. So I don't know why the structure's like that. I don't know why for about 9% of the story there's no mystery at all. It's all about before the mystery. Very strange to me why it's structured like that. Even though I didn't like the structure, even though the mystery is almost non-existent, I enjoyed the ride in this story. I still kind of liked the village life going on. I like some of those support characters. They're very colourful, very engaging. They feel very real. They feel more real than the main character. So I'm wondering what this series is going to be like. And in this month, I read book 2, and I'll tell you about that later on in this video. But after that cozy mystery, I returned to Stephen King, and I read Mr. Mercedes, a brilliant book. So different to anything else Stephen King writes, and there's no paranormal aspect, no supernatural aspect, no aliens, no monsters, no creatures. It's a detective story, it's a mystery, it's a thriller. But this book has 3 characters that I think are 3 of the best characters Stephen King's written. We have Bill Hodges, we have Holly, we have Brady, who's the villain, one of the best villains Stephen King's done in all his books. The cat and mouse game between Bill and Brady is just amazing in this story. I was so engaged with that, and that tension and suspense builds up in the book. Doesn't slow down, doesn't drop down to nothing, doesn't decrease, it's just a constant build up. Everything about this story is so well done. It seems so well plotted and thought out. We always hear about how Stephen King doesn't plot out his stories, but this book feels like it was. It feels very tightly plotted and controlled. And just the way the characters interact with each other at certain times and their environments and different scenes and things like that just feels so real, so organic. Everything in this story feels just so well done. I like this book so much. Then I read book 2 in the Sophie Sayers series, and it's a cozy mystery series, and I started with book 1 in October as well. And I wondered what would happen in book 2 because book 1 wasn't that great. Would book 2 develop the series more? Would I get more into the village life in this book? Would I get into that main character more? Would I engage with the main character more in this story? No. This book is not very good at all. The main character development is just like going backwards rather than going forwards. So the start of the series, the main character, even though I didn't engage with the main character very much, she was confident, she was independent. She had a lot going for her in the series. In this book, not like that at all. She seems not confident, she seems weak. She seems like she's hunting for a man, needs to be with a man to feel secure, to feel proper about herself or something. Just seems strange to develop a character like this. Then it happens, the structure's the same as book 1. So we have a great hook again in the start of the book. Then it's back in time, and we have a long lead up, about 90% of the story again, maybe even more this time. Then we have the kind of the murder again, and then we have a bit after the murder and the story finishes. But in this book, there's no investigation at all. None at all, not even a hint of an investigation. And the whole lead up to the murder again, that whole middle section, I shouldn't say middle section, because that's more than 90% of the book. Very tedious. Didn't enjoy that very much. Some of the support characters I liked, but I just didn't enjoy this very much at all. The main character, and also, I guess, the main support character, not very engaging in this story. And that relationship between them just felt a bit creepy sometimes. So, I don't know about this series. At this stage, I don't know I'll continue on with the series. I'm not sure. There are too many books to read. Maybe later on in the future, maybe I'll pick it up again. But at this stage, I'm not thinking about reading more in this series. I then read I Did It For You by Amy Engel. It's a cold case mystery, and I thought I'd like this because I love cold case mysteries, but I didn't enjoy this book that much. It's got a great concept. So it's basically about this woman who returns to her hometown after 14 years. Her sister was murdered 14 years ago, and her sister's boyfriend as well at the same time. And then there's another murder. So a new murder now, and it's exactly the same as that murder all those years ago. She returns back to her hometown, but she's not going there thinking that maybe they convicted the wrong person for her sister's murder. She's still sure they had the right guy. I would have been more engaged if she was thinking they convicted the wrong person and she's trying to find out who really murdered her sister. That would have been more engaging. That's not the story. The story is she's just trying to find out why her sister was murdered. That's all. It just seemed odd to me, that whole concept. Also, it isn't meant to be a slow burn mystery. But for me, a good slow burn mystery has suspense, tension, has something there to keep you engaged while that mystery just slowly churns away in the story. So for me, it fails as a slow burn mystery. And other things in this story just didn't work for me as well. But there are good things in this story. I like the setting. It's a small town setting. I like that a lot. It feels real. It feels organic and lifelike. I like some of the characters, the way they interact with each other mainly. On the surface, the characters are good, but not very deep characters. But the main character and her two friends in this small town, the way they interact, it really felt like they were characters who knew each other for many years. They were so well done. Their dialogue, their body language with each other, the way they interact and act with each other, their reactions, everything feels like they've been old friends for many years. So well done in that aspect and the small town setting. But for the mystery, not so well done. The concept was good, not so well planned out and thought out, I think. So not a great cold case mystery, which is a shame, because I do like cold case mysteries very much. I then flipped back to Stephen King and I read Carrie. Now, I like the concept of Carrie a lot, but for me, this feels like a novella with just add-ons to make it novel length, and it really is. If you read up on Carrie, on the writing of the book, you'll find out that Stephen King wrote a novella, and then he wanted to write a novel, so he just wrote other things and tacked it on to the novella. So it feels like a novella with things tacked on, and for me, those tacked on things drag me out of the story all the time. And I don't want to be dragged out of this story. That main narrative about Carrie and her mother and this prom, all that stuff going on in her main narrative is so well done. It's so gripping. Carrie and her mother are great characters. And to be just taken out of that narrative and have other things going on, you know, this testimony in a trial or something, and these snippets of books people have written after the fact, doesn't add anything to the story for me. It just pulls me out of the narrative, and all that tension and suspense, all that build-up of atmosphere is just taken away. But there are great things in this story. We have great horror elements, and when that horror element starts in the story, it's very gripping, very engaging, quite full on. I can see why people were hooked on this book when it was published. But this book also asks questions. Is Carrie a victim, or is she evil? At times, she's a victim. Things happen to her. People mistreat her. But she seems to be over the top as well. So if people mistreat her, she's punishing a whole town. Does that make her evil? That's asked all through this story. Also, just asked a question about people on the fringes, people pushed out because they may be different, how easy it is for people to do that. It seems like people just find it easier to push people away rather than turn around and find out, are they okay? So that asked that as well in this story. There's other questions there as well, but I think this book is very deep because of that, many layers. The last book I read in October is Haunted, written by James Herbert. I like this book so much. It's the first book in the David Ash trilogy. It's a haunted house story, but it's also very gothic. There's so much gothic atmosphere when the main character arrives at this house, and it's set in a very isolated house in Scotland. And the house is very large, like a manor house. The characters in this story. So in this house, there are 3 siblings in their early to mid-20s, I think, and they're living with their aunt. And their aunt acts like a housekeeper / cook / nanny for them, things like that. But every character in this story is very well told. There are things in this house going on when David's staying there. They're very spooky, very creepy, very chilling. There are questions asked in the story of the reader. You're asked to make assumptions about certain things, and those assumptions are then second guessed because there are many twists and turns in the story as well. The characters are very suspicious. They act very strangely at different times. This is such a well-told story, and David Ash is a great protagonist. The best thing about the protagonist, David Ash, is he's investigating paranormal things, but he's a skeptic. I like that about him. It just opens up possibilities for the character, and it makes you wonder what's going to happen at the end of the story. Are his assumptions going to be proven right or wrong? So everything in this story is so well told and thought out. Great setting, great concept, great atmosphere. The gothic feeling in this book is so strong. Anybody who likes gothic horror should read this book. It's a great example of a true gothic horror. There you have all the books I've read in October. If you've read any of the books I discussed in this video or any pique your interest, let me know in the comments. Also, any other books you've read in October you think I'd enjoy, let me know. I'm on the lookout for new books, new authors all the time. On my channel I review books of all different genres. Check out my channel and subscribe. On the screen now is a link to a video for a book I'm sure you'll enjoy.